in the BJP, Nitish ji was himself uncomfortable and was being treated in a manner that made it clear to him who's the boss. Mr. Narendra Modi's strategy to begin with in his ascent to the pinnacle of the BJP was to first influence the middle class. I'm not in favor of mere jod-tod politics. What we need is not arithmetic unity. What we need is organic unity. I had once a boss in MEA who would tell me on the intercom, I say, old chap, there is an HMT type of guy here. Then he's called the UMT, do medium type.
Namaste, Jai Hind. Welcome to another edition of ANI Podcast with Smita Prakash. Today's episode is my conversation with Pavan Varma. Mr. Varma has been a former bureaucrat. He was in the External Affairs Ministry, held very important positions, an ambassador. He's also an author who's written a book on variety of subjects. He's been a politician, joined Nitish's JDU, and then moved over to the TMC, uncomfortable with Nitish's U-turn when he joined the BJP or joined an alliance with the BJP, to be specific. Pavan Varma is also an essentially a Delhi boy. He typifies what is known as Lutyens Delhi or what is known as the Khan Market gang. So I spoke about all that. I spoke about politics, and he discussed with me what it meant to make the transition from bureaucracy to politics. He spoke about being of Hindutva, of what it means for a Sanatan Hindu or an Hindu to face this Hindutva onslaught, as he terms it, and then spoke about bureaucracy, the letters which are being written about by bureaucrats against the government, for the government. A myriad of issues. So it's an interesting conversation about what it means for grassroots level politics versus a kind of an elite view about what grassroots level politics is about. But he remains grounded in spite of being from elite Delhi. Pavanji, thank you very much for speaking with me on ANI Podcast with Smita Prakash.
Pleasure is mine.
It's an absolute pleasure and honor to have you here. We've known each other for so long. When I was cutting my teeth in journalism, you were in the Foreign Service, and very kindly you used to give me information which I could use in my stories. And the beat was different. The Foreign Office beat was different. Television was like so small.
I know.
And we were so few of us in doing television, but you took to the medium very easily, even then, though I guess when you joined the service, there was just print, not much of television. So anyway, and you after an illustrious career in the Foreign Service, you decided to make the shift and join politics. So before I get on to today's India and today's politics, I want to know from you, what prompted you? Why did you move from a steady way of life, which bureaucracy is, to the tumult of politics?
Well, I greatly enjoyed the Foreign Service. And let me reiterate what a great pleasure it is to talk to you. As you said, we've known each other for so long. Not only you, but Sanjeev, your husband, your father-in-law, your father, Mr. Ramon Rao, who was very close to me. So I enjoyed the Foreign Service, but I felt I wanted a larger canvas to be better able, in my small way, to contribute to bigger issues. So I was toying with the idea of public life for a while. And I was about to take the step, but it so happened, as a coincidence, that Mr. Nitish Kumar, the Chief Minister of Bihar, visited Bhutan when I was ambassador there. And we got on very well. And one thing led to another, and he said to me, I told him I would like to work with you. Although I must confess, at that time I had offers also from the Congress party. I had friends in the BJP. The late Arun Jaitley was my class fellow since school, college, law faculty.
Okay.
So we were very good friends.
You were in St. Stephen's.
I was
and,
in St. Stephen's, he went to Sri Ram. We were both debaters. We used to debate against each other. Then we both joined Law Fac together. And we were in the same class in St. Xavier's School.
Okay.
So, but I joined Nitish Kumar and made the transition to politics. He was very kind in the sense that he made me a cabinet minister straight away as advisor to the chief minister, and later sent me to the Raj Sabha. And I have never regretted the decision, Smita. But that was the main motivation. I must say that in a certain way, I was already in public life because of the many books I had
Books,
written.
right.
So I was not entirely a conventional bureaucrat.
Right.
And so it seemed logical to take this step to see how I could, in my small way, contribute.
But the books that you have written, that wasn't hardcore politics. It was. I mean, from writing about the middle class to writing about the Kama Sutra, you've written the canvas is vast, but it's not about say like. Maybe, suppose it had been the Naxal issue or caste or something like that, which was hardcore politics. You didn't write about that.
No, actually, the service rules don't permit you
Correct.
to write on politics per se. But I must say that I pushed those horizons almost to the limit. For instance, apart from Ghalib, my biography, Krishna, and
Poetry
so on,
and all that,
poetry,
yeah.
I
Kaifi Azmi
translated
and
Gulzar Sahab,
Gulzar
I
Sahab,
translated Kaifi Azmi,
Vajpayee
and
and
above all, Atal Bihari Vajpayee,
Vajpayee, yes.
which was a very warm relationship. But like my book, The Great Indian Middle Class,
Yes.
now it is not written with a political stance, but it encompasses so many political points of view.
True.
Similarly, my book, Being Indian,
Yeah.
which was a hard look at who we are, had an entire chapter, the first chapter, on power and our obsession with power. So there were tangential comments on politics, but I didn't write about it directly. So, but those books fortunately did well. I was in the public realm. I was speaking on contemporary issues because of some of them.
Right.
And so I think that in some form I was already in public life. I made a transition to direct politics
Right.
when I resigned from the
So tell me what was it that didn't work with you and the JDU? I mean, there was that letter that you had written about how it didn't sit well when Nitish joined hands with the BJP, especially on CAA and NRC. I saw that letter that you had written. So was it just that, or were you just uncomfortable with the way Nitish had made a U-turn at that stage?
Well, I think it was a combination of both. Nitish ji, when I joined him, was a member of the NDA. Mr. Narendra Modi had not yet come on the scene. And with that BJP, he seemed to be comfortable, and
You were comfortable with
I
that
was
NDA?
comfortable. I knew Atal Bihari Vajpayee very well, Mr.
Advani ji also.
Advani ji also very well, and I think I joined him for what he had done in Bihar. So I mean, there were
Okay.
two aspects to it. Then he decided to take a strong stand against the ascent of Mr. Narendra Modi as the leader of the BJP, and we were with him. He suffered for it. We suffered for it. In the 2014 elections, as you know, the JDU just got 2 seats in the parliamentary elections. When Nitish ji resigned, we were with him, and Mr. Manjhi became chief minister, and we remained with him on principle.
When you say suffered, you mean electorally suffered?
Electorally.
Okay.
Electorally, he suffered for that choice. I mean, it would have been perhaps easier in terms of pure expediency or utility to be with a rising star and be a part of the NDA
Sure.
at that time. But that was his decision, and we backed it on grounds of ideology and principle. And then, when he made that U-turn to the BJP, now there were close to 5 years of him being very vocal about why the Bharat, RSS Mukt Bharat,
Yeah.
and his criticism of Narendra Modi. So this overnight switch uh, was quite inexplicable to me, frankly.
None of you had any inkling that he was mulling over this move.
No, actually, the truth is, and I don't know if it was intentional, I was a national general secretary of the JDU, and I have checked with my colleagues, the 4 or 5 others who were on this top executive position in the party. None of them seemed to know it. It seemed to have been a decision worked out in Patna. And perhaps he took that decision from the best intentions,
Okay.
but it was ideologically such a volte-face, I mean, such a
Right.
U-turn that I was uncomfortable, but I was with him still because in many ways there is a great personal affection between me and Nitish. He has been very kind to me. And also his personal integrity, his administrative acumen, his intellectual leanings, these were things that bonded us together. But on the CAA NRC, and I'm not saying my views are correct. I know in India there are two views on the subject. I know your views are different from mine. I said that for him to approve of the CAA NRC, because the JDU had supported that in Parliament. And so I voiced my opposition, and it became that
Yeah.
I was expelled from the party.
Did that
Alo-
hurt? Does
No,
it does it bother?
no, it did hurt because it was a very cherished and treasured
Because the
relationship.
way I know you, you would have chosen to get out rather than wait to be expelled. Because that is something a hardcore politician does. Take a stand, wait to be expelled, and then move over to.
You see, there
No?
seemed to be at that time no meeting point. And I was seeing, and now Nitish ji acknowledges himself, that as in the BJP, Nitish ji was himself uncomfortable and was being treated in a manner that made it clear to him who's the boss. In fact, when the first time Narendra Modi came and it was on a public rally in Patna, and Nitish ji made one request and he said, मैं आपसे हाथ जोड़ के कहता हूँ कि पटना यूनिवर्सिटी को वो recognition दे दीजिए, you know. And the Prime Minister listened to it, gave no assurance, and nothing happened. So, I mean, these kind of things were happening, and I was uncomfortable with it because I also saw Nitish ji as a leader in his own right. And he used to be
But
the
he
leader
was,
of the
right?
largest party.
I mean, the BJP. That's one thing about whichever party wins or loses in Bihar, he stays the chief minister. So where is it? I mean, I understand that in private, and then sensitivities get hurt. These are things which happen in politics. But the point is, at no point of time was anybody in the BJP for contention for chief minister's job. It was always going to be Nitish. Election after election, doesn't matter how many seats he would get. There was something about Nitish Kumar that he stays chief minister. Anyway,
But
to get to
2019 onwards, it became much worse.
worse. Okay.
When
PK
he,
also left because of this reason.
he and I were expelled from the party on the same day by the same letter.
Do you think it was completely Nitish Kumar's choice, or was the decision to expel you, or do you think
No, I think it could have been a party
corridor
choice.
whispers of
No, it could have been a party
Party
choice, and I think in terms of the disciplinary rules of the party, they felt it appropriate
then
to expel us.
why did you immediately go over to the TMC?
Not immediately.
Okay. Give
I
it
must
for a-
say there was a hiatus of almost 2 years. And let me also clarify that after I was expelled, at a personal level, my relationship with Nitish ji
Continued,
remained
yes.
to be good.
Sure.
I went to see him once at the height of COVID. We had a long chat. We used to talk to each other. And 2019 onwards, I think Nitish ji was feeling uncomfortable but unable to break with the BJP. You know, he was
Yes.
reduced to 43 seats
Yeah.
through what he calls the Chirag Paswan factor. Now he became a junior partner and not at the highest level, but at the level of Patna and Bihar politics, BJP leaders would make comments about, who's the real boss.
But that's
And so.
always been the case in Bihar politics. There's always been this kind of they'll be together because of coalition problems, but they would keep making these statements. That's the Bihari way of doing politics, is where you don't. It's a no holds barred issue when it comes to speaking your mind. At least that's what my experience has been with. I mean, even with Lalu Yadav and the others, they would keep. There was this acerbic comments that Laluji would make about Nitish ji, but they were together at one point of time during the Gathbandhan, despite. So it was like, two brothers in a joint family where they do talk. So anyway, let's get to the TMC part. So you joined TMC at a point where TMC was expanding, getting people across the board, thinkers, cricketers, everybody was coming in. And so one thought, okay, natural progression, Pavanji goes towards
Well,
TMC. And then you leave the TMC
no,
again?
I'll tell you what's happened. I'll be honest and candid with you. With Nitish ji in the BJP alliance, people like me were wondering how to have one figure who could be primus inter pares, first among equals, in terms of being able to coordinate and bring together the opposition, which a democracy needs, which the Prime Minister himself says that a democracy must have. And after her dramatic victory in West Bengal for a third time, we felt that she has the fire, the energy, the belief of perhaps scaling up the TMC, even perhaps with a new name, a new constitution on a, let's say, a wider level than just Bengal.
Oh, really? Okay.
But
A new name? That was
yeah,
ambitious.
I mean, in the sense that the TMC was largely a Bengal-centric
Sure.
party. But Mamta ji's personal image was, I think, larger than just a regional leader. So how could we leverage that
Okay.
in a democratic way? And actually, when I joined her, the truth is I had not gone to join her. And this is a very interesting story because perhaps I'm saying it for the first time publicly.
Sure.
And I say this with great respect and regard and admiration for her warmth. I went to call on her on one of her visits to Delhi. And she said to me, Pavanji, तो आप कब पार्टी ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं? So I was non-committal. She said, नहीं आप ज्वाइन कीजिए. Then she said, आज बहुत अच्छा दिन है. And she went inside because she's a very spontaneous and affectionate person and came out with a shawl which she says, मैं आपके लिए दार्जिलिंग से लाई हूँ.
Okay.
And she put it around my shoulder.
Okay.
And
Fait
then-
accompli, you were there.
No. I mean, and then a photograph was taken. And to be honest, at some level, she knew that I was thinking of how to reconfigure the opposition where she could play a pivotal role, but I had not joined the TMC.
Okay.
And then she said, after the meeting was over, I'll see you off to the gate, to the car. When I went there with her, there were 50 press people. And she said, Pavanji, ab hamare saath hai. And so a journey began.
Okay.
And she was even more kind. After 2-3 weeks, she made me the vice president
Yes.
of the party. But over a course of time, I realized, for the variety of reasons, that Mamta ji's energies required to be in terms of the opposition to her in Bengal, in terms of the needs of the TMC, the vision she has, the vision Abhishek has, that she is perhaps by compulsion very Bengal-centric. I'm not saying that she's not recognized as a national leader, but very Bengal-centric. And in a Bengal-centric party, I didn't see a role for myself. So with great politeness, I resigned.
So, of course, everybody talks about opposition unity, and my personal view is right now it's a phantom concept. It's not happening. You've been working on this behind the scenes, looking for somebody who could lead it, who could be there. Everybody knows that there's a whole bunch of people, whether it's Sita Ramji or you or PK, or hunting for this leader. So when you joined the TMC, the idea was that, oh, okay, there seems to be some kind of meeting of minds that she would lead it. But as you say, that she's very Bengal-centric. And do you see Nitish ji? Because, look at it it wasn't as if when we see the earlier experiments, it wasn't as if VP Singh had a national image. It wasn't as if Gujral Saab had, or Deve Gowda, or Chandrasekhar, or Charan Singh. None of them had this pan-India appeal. But our politics is such in our country, it happens. Do you see Nitish as a factor who would be acceptable for this pan-India image? Because now it's pre-election positioning, because that's what elections have become now. It's personality oriented. Do you see Nitish having the capability?
First, let's take the Nitish ji and then I'll talk of the opposition.
Sure.
See, Nitish ji has been Chief Minister of Bihar for 17 years. He's a grassroots politician from a very humble background who's risen to the top in Bihar, has been a cabinet minister at the center. In fact, in Atal Bihari Vajpayee's government, has been an MP in both the Lok Sabha and the Raj Sabha. So, and he comes from the Hindi heart belt in terms of a large state in the Hindi heart belt. Not that that is an essential prerequisite. He also has that certain seniority whereby, without being a threat to any other leader, he could, if he so desires, make the attempt, the seniority and the experience of trying to weave together some kind of pan-Indian coordination with a larger opposition. Let us call it a greater acceptability factor. He has good relations with almost every political.
Yeah, he met with KCR,
Yes.
with Kejriwal, with Rahul Gandhi.
I mean,
Are they all on board, or
no,
do they
no.
think the
No,
way?
that
No.
is not the way you can build opposition unity. I always say, Smita, that what we need is not arithmetic unity. What we need is organic unity, which is an organic unity based on strategy, coordination, minimum common program, one candidate from the opposition against the ruling BJP, a certain narrative of its own and not only criticism of the BJP, and an acceptable face, not necessarily the supreme leader, but who in a way acts as a pivot for the opposition. So this way, just meeting people is not the way an opposition unity. And remember, we have very little time for 2024.
But it didn't happen even for the presidential election, vice president. I mean, Mamta
Because
ji
this
didn't
is
even
not the
vote.
way. This is not the way.
Yeah.
Right now, if you ask me, I'm not very optimistic for the opposition. The reason is very simple. It is scattered. It is in silos. It is an opposition which is at war with itself. Let us give you 2-3 examples. The Congress party opposes the AAP perhaps even more than the BJP.
Right.
In West Bengal, the principal opposition to the largest party against the TMC was the BJP, and the principal opposition was the TMC. But the Congress and the CPIM
Yeah.
fought against Trinamool. Let's take Telangana. KCR is the obvious opponent, not of the Congress now. Their principal opponent
BJP.
is the BJP. But the Congress is fighting KCR rather than uniting. So just by speaking or meeting on a stage and holding your hands up, you are not going to get opposition unity. It has to be a radically out of the box program.
So, Pavanji, don't you think that with the Congress, what happens is it's an existential crisis if they don't fight KCR, right? Agreed that it's primarily BJP versus TRS in Telangana. But if they don't fight KCR, look at what he's saying. It's an opposition, united opposition minus the Congress. That's what KCR says. So they have to fight the TRS. When it comes to West Bengal, can you tell the Congress already they've ceded space? It's gone. They're no longer there in the reckoning. So everywhere, and with the AAP, they've gone in Congress in Punjab. So if they don't fight these regional parties or semi-regional parties, it's an existential crisis for them. They're angry.
Let me say 3 things. And I know Jairam's view or that of the Congress leadership for which he speaks is about Congress not ceding space.
Right.
And I completely understand that point of view. Congress is the mother of all political parties in India. And there was a time when, like a banyan tree, it had roots across the country. And therefore, its desire to once again resurrect that past is understandable. However, in my view, there are two combination of a dual strategy. One is the long term, where the Congress is entirely entitled over in due course to resurrect itself by making the internal reforms which the party deems to be essential. The second is a short term strategy.
2024.
2024, where without diluting or compromising upon your larger goal, in terms of the imminent challenge, you dovetail your larger ambitions with the imperative short-term priorities. So, I believe, with great respect, that in the Congress, they need to see this aspect, because when the opposition is fragmented or divided, it divides the votes of the opposition, and the only beneficiary is the BJP. A third point, let me say to you, and again with great respect to KCRG, I don't think you can have an opposition without the Congress. Now, why do I say it? I say it because there are at least 200 seats, parliamentary seats,
Where one-on-one.
where the Congress is the principal opponent of the BJP. Now, no other regional party is in a position to fight the BJP. So, ideally, a reformed or a revitalized Congress fights those elections. Because that's the bonanza for the BJP. BJP has a strike rate of 96% against the Congress. So, either the Congress or the entire opposition unites to strengthen the Congress as the principal opponent to the BJP in these 200 seats. If we have a non-Congress opposition.
That's really ambitious, Pavanji. Can you imagine today if you or Sitaramji or anybody who's been working towards an opposition unity for now over 5 years, I think, if I'm not wrong, is to get KCR, Sharad Pawar, Mamta, Akhilesh, Mayawati, who have I left out? Tejasvi, all of them to get together and say, okay, let's make Congress as a stronger party to take on the BJP, even the 150, 120, 170 seats to strengthen, because we are not there. So let's do this. Do you see any of them swallowing their egos, because it's become such an egotistical thing now in the opposition, and that's the reason they're fragmented?
So that's why I said I'm not very optimistic. But that does not mean that it's not doable. I'll tell you why. Politics is dynamic. Let me give you two examples. 1977, or before, from the emergency in 75 till 77, the opposition was rudderless. I mean, there were leaders, different parties. There was an old man.
There was a JP.
There was an old man sitting in Sadakat Ashram in Patna who woke up and became a cementing glue for an opposition. I'm not saying it was a very successful experiment, but it was good enough to decimate the Congress party post the emergency. Let us take another example, which seems even more invincible. Rajiv Gandhi comes in 84 with 404 MPs. I mean, he seemed to be there forever.
Yeah.
And in 87, 8 people meet in a drawing room in Delhi. And you know who they are: VP Singh, Arun Nehru, Ramdhan, and so on and so forth. And out of nowhere, a VP Singh emerges.
A middle-class messiah to take on. Yes,
Yeah. I'm not saying it will happen. And let me not for a moment devalue the popularity of Narendra Modi ji. He is right now undoubtedly
Do you forget
the
there was
towering political figure in the country.
Do you remember the Anna movement also? So when Anna Hazare came, everybody, I mean not everybody, but there was a section which thought that, okay, here's another person like a JP. who could, but he fizzled out, just like VP Singh fizzled out at one point of time. Now there's this talk that could it be Nitish? Kya? But there is one lot which say कि वो जो मंडलाइजेशन ऑफ पॉलिटिक्स था, वो मंडल एजिटेशन वाला पॉलिटिक्स, वो नहीं हो सकता. जो नीतीश जी का वो जो कास्ट बेस्ड पॉलिटिक्स सिस्टम है, वो बिहार तक में नहीं चल सकता. क्या वो देश भर में, क्या उसका जादू चल सकता है?
No, there is a serious challenge now. I'm not saying it's mandal politics or let us say caste cohesion on certain issues of interest to those castes. It is a factor. But also we must understand that today that mandal instrument is being used against a political party which has 3 or 4 great intrinsic strengths, which is the BJP. First, they have a very popular leader. Secondly, they have a strong cadre and organization, if you combine it with the RSS cadre also. Thirdly, it's a 24/7 electoral machine.
Yeah.
And fourthly, they have, whether you agree with it or not, a narrative which essentially consists of 3 or 4 elements. Hindutva politics, hyper-nationalism, and I must say, partly successful welfareism, where targeted help has reached the poorest sections of society. So now, if mandal politics by itself is pitted against this, it's not enough. You have to do something more.
So this Congress's Bharat Jodo Yatra is supposedly that to galvanize the cadres, and once the cadres are galvanized, then fix a narrative. Maybe a year or two late in doing this, but then there was COVID or whatever. But that is the idea that the Congress has, that that they need to, well, understandably so, that get their cadres. But and you see, at every point of time, they have to battle a party which, as you say, has very strong cadre, has a narrative, knows how to take on the opposition and things, and the opposition looks divided. Now, there's another line which says that this pre-election unity moves is a lost game. Let's not do that. It happens after the election. This fragmented parties get together, and we've seen UPA 1, UPA 2. It works. So let's do that. Let's all get like our own little groups. Let KCR get his, let Mamta get hers. So once it's all done, then like you had a Mulayam or like you had a Harkishan Singh Surjeet getting together and post-election.
No, frankly, Smita, I'm not in favor of mere jod-tod politics. If the opposition does not put together a compelling narrative which appeals to people, merely an series of arithmetical permutations and combinations will not create a convincing political entity as opposed to the BJP. It will not.
Okay.
So, there are legitimate discontents. The opposition has not put its act together. I tell you, price rise. It's hurting people. I know for a fact the middle class has been reduced by almost 22%. The poor have become poorer. We live in a very unequal society where 1% of the rich own disproportionately the wealth and assets of this, while the poor have become poorer. There are no doubt achievements of the current government, but in spite of that, the global hunger index, India has gone down rather than up. So there are legitimate discontents.
So if you were to write your middle class book again, you would revisit it and maybe write a different story?
I'll tell you why I may write a different story. Because I know that Mr. Narendra Modi's strategy to begin with in his ascent to the pinnacle of the BJP was to first influence the middle class, because it has a ripple effect across the country. The middle class is a pan-Indian class. And he did that most successfully as a strong, decisive leader with a vision against the lackluster and somewhat unimpressive performance of UPA 2. So he emerged, and the middle class loves a messiah. And he came as one. Now, if the middle class is disillusioned, the BJP needs to worry. Because you can only do so much of Hindutva. People will go with Hindutva because I think there are reasons for a certain degree of Hindu backlash. In my latest book, The Great Hindu Civilization, where I analyze those reasons and I accept the validity of some of them. And I can, on another occasion or whenever you want, go through each of them. So there is a resonance to a certain reclaiming of Hindu pride.
But you differentiate between
but
that.
I think the same Hindus
don't want that
don't
Hindutva.
want it
That's what
endemic
you say.
instability, law and order situations, and जिसको कहते हैं हिंदी में अस्थिरता. Because Hindus are not jihadis. In fact, most citizens in this country, except for a certain fringe which exists in all religions, want to get on with their lives. You'll be surprised. During the height of the Ayodhya agitation in 1992, the traders of Faizabad and Ayodhya went on strike. I have mentioned it in my book, Being Indian, and when they were asked, they said, ये तो रोज यहाँ कर्फ्यू लगता है, हमारा धंधा कैसे होगा?
Yeah, so that dhanda bit is there everywhere. It was there in Gujarat. It was there in. So those who are, I'll tell you, when this whole Ayodhya movement happened and the Rath Yatras were out and all, and I saw one of our television producers. We'd gone to dinner to his house, and he had this sticker on his door which said, "गर्व से कहो हम हिंदू हैं." And I was like, धर साहब क्यों पर गर्व से कहो, मतलब हिंदू तो हिंदू है, उसमें गर्व की क्या बात है, मतलब it was a way of life for all of us, right? We never felt the need to say it, but that comes from this sense of entitlement because our Hinduism or our being a Hindu was never in threat, but he was a Kashmiri Hindu, right? His identity as a Hindu was under threat for a long, long time. So he needed to say it. I understand so for me it was a shocker, and I understood this entitled Hindu that I was, who never felt her Hindu, or entitled upper caste that I never understood the Mandal agitation. I had to ask, कि क्या है ये? Like what is... Because why? We were urban, we were cosmopolitan. We never felt, nobody asked us, and I never this easy upper caste life that one leads where caste doesn't affect me. It didn't affect me. It's only when the Mandal agitation happened that I realized how entitled my life was, how cushy my life was, that I didn't face any atrocity. So I couldn't understand that.
Quite right.
Right? The same way, till that Hindutva movement happened with the Rath Yatra, I didn't understand the angst of the Hindus who were under that threat. Similarly, I can't even begin to understand, or I couldn't till I saw the Muslims being, atrocities on them. So unless you experience that, to say that, oh, this is uncalled for. Anyway, now that I'm talking about that, I have to speak to you because you're essentially a Delhi wala. What do you have to say to this whole Lutyens Delhi, Khan Market gang? Because you are a Khan Market gang. I'm a Khan Market gang, right? We love to go to the Khan Market. We love to go to Khan Market and shop and eat and have discussions. So do you feel that, okay, maybe they are right. We are entitled. We were this Khan Market gang.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt.
Let me tell you, when you refer, you can give it any label, Lutyens, Khan Market gang. The fact is that there is a small but minuscule class which are the beneficiaries of inherited power and privilege. It also is a fact that they are vociferous in their views, but visibly cut off from the mainstream of life of the common masses outside the metropolises. Thirdly, it's a class which in a way inherited power from the departing British. Although the country won independence, the immediate beneficiaries were those who were already positioned to take advantage of independence. Their English was good. Their fluency in English was good. They had been to good schools. Their parents were well-to-do. And therefore, the opportunities that they got were available to them without competition. When I gave the Foreign Service exam, you could give the exam only in English.
Yeah.
Out of my batch of the Foreign Service, there were 10 boys from St. Stephen's. It's unfair. You have to democratically empower others. Now, the problem with Lutyens is, and the Khan Market gang is, that they are so convinced about the validity of their point of view that I call them reflex liberalists, which was just speaking about Hinduism. For instance, they are strong believers in secularism. But they have not read the Ramayana except as a comic.
Yeah.
They believe that, they know Shakespeare more than Kalidas. So I'm just saying that they're cut off from the life impulses of the country.
A lot in the MEA. Let me tell you this one example. I'm interrupting you, but there was we'd gone to cover the EU summit, and Yashwant Sinha was the EAM, External Affairs Minister, and Vajpayee ji was the Prime Minister, and the briefing happened like you always used to do as XP heads. So the external publicity, whoever was the JSXP, I don't remember exactly who it was, but he then gave the questions, and the question answer session continued, and it was Mr. Yashwant Sinha answering all the questions. And so at one point of time I said, sir, आपने जो अंग्रेजी में कहा है आप जरा हिंदी में कहेंगे. And the entire media team which was covering it, all these English speaking people who cover, and mind you, I was part of that. They giggled and they laughed. Oh, come on, you can translate it. Why do you need that? Right? So then the JSXP said, chalo, utho. So I went up to Yashwant Sinha and I said that, wo to theek hai, but you come from a Hindi belt.
Quite right.
Do you understand that there are Hindi channels which will not use this? Won't use this because it's too much of a pain. EU का summit चल रहा है, European Union में क्या चल रहा है? You think बिहार में या उत्तर प्रदेश में anybody is interested? मजाक उड़ गया हमारा EU में because of whatever happened at that summit. There was some incident. But no, I don't want to elaborate. But even politicians, let me tell you, when they reach that age, when they reach that become an external affairs minister, forget their roots. It's only now, when people have realized that we need to be aware कि हम लोग कहाँ से निकले हैं और हमारा वोट बैंक किस तरफ है भाई, अंग्रेजी में नहीं है. I too learned how to speak in Hindi only when I realized that I'm not reaching my audience.
Absolutely.
It's not my language. I'm a South Indian. But I learned how to speak fluently in Hindi as much as I can because of this. This whole Lutyens gang, Khan Market, it is a reality, isn't it?
Indeed. And let me tell you, in my case, I went to St. Columbus.
Yeah, exactly.
I went to St. Xavier's. I went to St. Stephen's. I could have become a saint at the end of it. But I am proud that today, or even from much earlier, I can speak fluently in Hindi, write in Hindi. I have translated Urdu. But I had once a boss in MEA who would tell me on the intercom, I say, old chap, there is an HMT type of guy here.
Hindi medium type.
And once he even used an expression called UMT. And then he's called the UMT, Urdu medium type, Can you deal with him? So this kind of elitism...
You mimic very well. I know exactly who you mean, but I'm not going to say the name.
No, this kind of elitism cut off from the reality of India, which, by the way, and this is my footnote, doesn't mean that whatever the so-called Lutyens gang or Kharmarket gang believes in is wrong. But they need to develop greater authenticity, credibility in voicing it.
Right.
Otherwise, it appears that they are, in a sense, prisoners of a past, of a value system, with which they are unable to interpret for the masses.
So tell me this. You've written an article also I read recently about the bureaucracy, writing letters, suddenly finding spine or the lack of it, whatever you might. I mean, you have two views on that about, because obviously you will appreciate letters written by a certain set of bureaucrats against a certain government, and a certain set of bureaucrats who are writing against those bureaucrats. What is happening? It never used to happen, right? Bureaucrats never got together. They were so divided as a lot. Now suddenly these letter wars are happening.
No, because I think the most, I mean, unless they get more involved, and I respect their views, a group of bureaucrats supporting something or a group of bureaucrats criticizing something, I think I respect it, but it contributes little. And I think a certain greater degree of activism needs to happen. Because what happens? A group of bureaucrats write a letter critical of the government. The government collects its own supporters among bureaucrats and they write a counter letter. And so it's a pretty sterile kind of war going on in a
They're
teacup.
echo chambers, don't you think?
Yeah,
That
they are in echo chambers. But I know that many of those who write this letter are people who cannot become part of active politics, but they have their own views, a certain conviction, and they believe that certain things need to be preserved or certain things need to be defended. And I respect them for that. But
Yeah.
I think what we need is a greater effort.
See, not everybody can write columns. Not everybody goes on television. So if they get together and write a letter, is that okay? Is that fine?
I
as
think
a
it's a democracy. People can write letters.
should okay,
And I appreciate that.
okay.
My column, which you referred to, was about what happens to officers and bureaucrats when they are in service. And I don't make a great virtue of this. My father was in the ICS. And to take a stand which they believed to be correct, even if they felt that the political master may not like it,
One
came
in
to
a
them
million,
easily.
maybe.
Came to them far more easily. It's a small service. It was a service which still was independent. And I know of politicians, from the stories I heard from my father, who respected the officer for that. Because they would rather have someone who gives free and fair advice than someone who's a reflex yes man. But today things have changed.
It's not just today, no, Pavanji. I mean, I've also seen it. I mean, we're all products of the same system, but it's always been there. Those bureaucrats who defied, or forget about even defiance, even advised a politician in a certain manner, didn't get plum postings and didn't have post-retirement benefits, jobs. It's a system which has continued all through. Where is any
No,
change?
Perhaps it was always there, but the degree of the gradual compromise of the bureaucrat, where he has become an accessory to the politician, because both are beneficiaries. The politician is happy he's got a bureaucrat who endorses what he thinks. The bureaucrat is happy for the dividends of this kind of blind loyalty. Everybody is happy.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think it's a question of degree.
I just like, while I'm concluding, you mention in one of your articles that it's time to introspect the moral fiber of the country. Tell me, when you say this, like, as parents, we expect it out of our children, right? Our parents expected it out of us. But in practice, where does that come about? Because, it's many say that this whole in politics, morality is something which is dead long ago, and it's an overrated virtue. Do you think that's
No,
the case?
I must say that I can't say I'm aware of the inherent corruptions and amorality which some people justify as impossible to differentiate from politics. There is money power, there is unaccountable money, which in my view is the root of all corruption in the country. But that apart, I think the young in this country, Smita, need some role model. A role model who stands for a certain idealism, principles, personal integrity, and is willing to demonstrate it. Because otherwise the feeling grows कि भाई सभी ऐसे ही हैं तो हम क्यों ना हो. And that I feel is bad for a country, which is not a country. It's a civilization. It goes back to the dawn of time. In terms of ethics, in terms of idealisms, in terms of principles, in terms of conviction, there are few civilizations that can match this country. And for it to lose its moral anchorage of the difference between right and wrong, in my view, is a tragedy.
So, do we expect it out of any one individual? And does that individual become like a religious guru, a political guru, a spiritual guru? Do we seek that? What do we seek when we seek this moral fiber to somebody to enhance or to bring out morality in society? What do we do?
It's difficult because I realize people and politicians are people also, and they operate within a certain system where the end becomes far more important than the means, let me be honest. However, I think that a nation which is bereft of idealism, and I can only quote again, it's a cliched example of what Mahatma Gandhi, by the sheer dint of his personality and personal example, kind of bequeathed to this country, at least for the initial years after our independence. A certain, let's say, reticence as far as wealth goes, a certain awareness of the number of people who still are poor, a certain ability to say no to personal gain at the cost of public good. These were value systems. And over a time, if everything becomes transactional, where are the young in this country who shall be world leaders at one time? I think it's bad for them. That's all I feel.
Thank you very muji for speaking with us, Pavanji. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, the pleasure is mine. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Hope you enjoyed listening or watching to this interview with Mr. Pavan Varma on ANI podcast with Smita Prakash. Do like or subscribe to whichever platform you've seen it or heard it in. Namaste. Jai Hind.